Thank you. Very good morning to you in US. Good evening to all of you in Asia, and a good afternoon to you in Europe. Very warm welcome for this webinar on inventorization and its relevance for home insurance. Just a brief context. At least 85% of homeowners in US have homeowners insurance, and policies cost at an average of around $1,500 a year. While it is not a required form of coverage by the government, home insurance is typically required as a condition of having a mortgage and is very valuable in the protection it offers homeowners. In spite of strong value and regular purchase by homeowners, if one goes by some of the recent independent surveys, there is a clear disconnect between the insured and the insurer. For instance, Value Penguin's survey found out that nearly 47% of homeowners are unsure of what their insurance covers. J.D. Power's survey found out that over 50% of homeowners do not have a complete understanding of their coverage. As per Marshall and Swift, homeowners have a lot of trouble identifying the replacement value of their homes and the contents. With increasing number of homeowners claims in the recent past, especially because of natural catastrophes, it becomes important to understand how can this entire experience of homeowners insurance be made smoother, seamless, and pain-free. And a fundamental part of this comes from inventory, or rather inventorization of the home contents. To further deliberate on this, we have four panelists with us this morning. Carol Kaufman is the founder, CEO of Inventory and the creator of Inventory Home Inventory, a web-based SaaS product that collects and organizes your important information into one safe, secure location, allowing you to access it from anywhere, anytime you need it. Her first business, a 20-year-old product, Investia, was acquired by SunGard in 2002 and is still used internationally by participants in the alternatives industry. An entrepreneur for over 40 years, Carol's specialties include public speaking, training, and software or service-based solutions to organizational and logistical problems. She resides in New Jersey. We have with us Jim Kane. Jim is the Senior Vice President and National Practice Leader for Personal Risk at USI Insurance Services. He has more than 3 decades of experience in the insurance business and has been designing and implementing custom personal risk management programs for successful families and individuals. Jim is a trustee of the Private Risk Management Association, and he served as the president of the association for 6 years, stepping down in March of 2021. He joins us from his office in Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, where he resides with family. Patrick Callahan. Patrick is a global insurance advocate who has significant experience within the US property claims environment. In his current role with H2M Architects Plus Engineers, he serves as insurance consultant to carriers. Pat's interest in personal property valuations dates back to the Northridge earthquake response in the mid-1990s. Within the insurance industry, he is also known as the insurance elephant. Welcome to you, Patrick. And we have with us Neelam Paharia. Neelam is the Director of Product Transformation at Allstate. She has more than 20 years of P&C experience in personal lines in product development and P&L management. In her current role, she leads competitive intelligence and strategy development on emerging business opportunities. Welcome, Neelam. While we kickstart the conversation, I will engage the audience or the panelists with some open-ended questions. All panelists are welcome to respond and share your thoughts. My first question will be for Carol. Carol, you have been a technology entrepreneur right through 1980s, when tech industry itself, as we know it now, was in early stages. What led to Inventory?
I was the person that got the phone call that nobody ever wants to get. My parents were on their way back from their country home, and they were in a car accident. My mother was instantly killed, and my father was in a coma. When he awakened, he'd lost all of his executive level skills. So for the next 14 years, I became his primary care medical coordinator. When he passed away, I ended up having to go on a 5-year scavenger hunt to try to find all the trusts and multiple residences and information that I had to pull together in order to be able to settle the estate. Early into that, I realized that no one should ever have to go through what I went through. So I created a PC version of what is now Pinventory. I've been focusing on home inventories and critical documents for many reasons. It is most timely right now. It is with everything that's going on in the world. It actually is the least invasive. It's the easy for people who are concerned about putting all of their information together. It is easily able to be done. You can do a very, very basic home inventory of your home actually in less than an hour. And it makes the biggest impact because when there is a crisis, you need to understand the universe of your assets. And usually the things that are most important are those critical documents and the ability to be able to distribute the assets. So that is why I created Pinventory.
Thank you, Carol. Uh, so far, how has been the real life experiences of your clients? What has changed for them after using Inventory?
Well, I have 3 types of clients. I have the end users that create Pinventory, that create their home inventory themselves, walking around taking photos of their rooms. And I have a very specific way of having them be able to do that in under an hour. There's the second type of person who is doing this as a service for other people. And there is the third type, which are businesses that are offering Pinventory to their clients as a gift because it makes a statement. I care about you, I care about your family, and I care about your belongings, and I want to be able to protect you. I would say that all of those people, the end result is peace of mind. They know they don't have to scramble, whether they did it for themselves, by themselves, or whether they had somebody do it for them, or if they did it in a group with other people. It's a great family kind of project. The end result is that they feel more comfortable. I guess another type of client that I have is a business. As a client, I have a poultry farm. And when Ida came through, one of the issues was asking my client, do you have an inventory of all of your equipment and how much is your equipment worth? They thought about that and thought about the fact that their equipment is worth millions of dollars. And in 4 hours, we covered all of the buildings and all of the equipment that my client had. And it's all in Pinventory. So it's really the peace of mind. I also have a client who was in Katrina and she's high net worth. She lived right off the levee. She got a phone call to evacuate. They evacuated to Texas, just like they always used to. Only this time, every time they looked at Google Maps, all they saw was blue. And the reason all they saw was blue was because their entire neighborhood was underwater when the levee broke. And the bottom line was that Ellen did not have an inventory. She didn't have a list of what she had, and she lost everything. And her insurance company paid her zero for contents. So their lives have significantly changed because Ellen now has a home inventory.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Carol. That's quite helpful to understand the complete perspective. Jim, Jim, you have been at the forefront of risk management, and you've been engaging with premium paying clients all the time. Where does an inventory solution sit within the risk management framework you envisage for customers of home insurance?
So what we attempt to do is shift the focus away from managing policies and premiums to managing risk. And that may sound like a nuanced comment, but many of the people in my space actually still focus on managing the policies. What we try to do is help the client understand the importance of reducing the risk and the exposure. One of the reasons we seek out people like Carol is that our effort is to start with how do we reduce and mitigate the potential loss and put as much or more effort into that, and then the transfer to the insurance, which is only the most catastrophic solution. If the only thing, I work with a friend of ours, Carol, and I work with Paul Violas. He has a great line that he'd never say not to buy a burglar alarm, but if the only thing I do is let you know when the intruder's in the living room, I haven't really done my job. There's lots of things we could do prior to that. And when it comes to inventory, I think the two key things that we find and we would press for is an inventory is going to allow us to quantify the exposure. And it's essentially a best guesstimate by the insurance company, which applies a percentage to whatever the value of the house is. That's presuming the value of the house is correct. That's presuming they take into account people's taste and people's wherewithal and the way they're going to furnish their home. And so it's really a best guess. And many of the people we work with, first of all, I think Pat will probably hold me on this number, but it's probably about 1% of the claims are a total loss. And so unless you've gotten to experience that, you wouldn't really understand that even at 75% of the house value, the contents is probably not going to be enough. An inventory, so first thing the inventory would do is allow us to put a number on that is more metric or analytically driven than a best guess on the rate. The second thing would be to reduce the work that's going to occur if God forbid you face a total loss or a large loss at the house, because you then have to reconstruct it. And from a personal standpoint, the story I shared with Carol when we called and talked about this session was I had a duffel bag and a briefcase stolen out of the back of my car. And when I sat down to actually reconstruct what I was carrying in my old briefcase, it made me sweat thinking if I had to do that for a house, right? I mean, this was a relatively small item. And I had banking statements, I had credit card statements, I had a bunch of stuff in that, which triggered a whole lot of other activity. And it's really a small example of what I'm talking about, but reconstructing your home or reconstructing your apartment with everything in it is a huge challenge. And I would agree with Carol. I think the most important thing this does, that if we attempt to reduce the loss and mitigate the exposure, that what we do is create peace of mind, a little more comfort with what they've A, purchased, and B, what happens on the back end. And I think that's the most important thing that we can do. We try to communicate to our clients. This is not a statement on insurance companies, but the truth is there's no good claim, there's only variations of bad claims. And the best way to reduce that is to be better prepared. And I think an inventory is a good example of it.
Interesting comments, Jim. I see Patrick and Neelam nodding, and I'm itching for Patrick to chip in with his vast claims knowledge. But before that, Jim, while you do enumerate the benefits of an inventory solution, what do you think would be the strongest motivator for your personal lines clients to start accepting and pushing for an inventory solution next time they are renewing home insurance?
I think we work in a business that we are forced to discuss things that people have a difficult time wrapping their head around. And so the whole idea that you would sit down and openly discuss the idea that you could come home and the only thing left of your house would be the ashes from the remnants of the fire. And so what we try to do is work through the objections on the easier example I give you is for instance, a collection. And the first thing we'll get if we talk about creating a risk management plan and potentially insuring a large collection is, I don't know how much I have. I've been doing this for 20 years and nobody writes anything down. And there's lots of reasons they do that. There's tax purposes and things of that nature that they get worried about, or they just have been doing it so long. There's no. The second thing is, I don't know what the current value is. We have no appraisal. And so working through that is that the objections of not writing it down are really not valid unless you're secretly buying everything with cash through a separate buyer. You've left popcorn all over the world as the thing where you purchased everything you own. So you can forget about that. And the IRS has tools that they can go find that if they're really worried about it. And so really, instead of covering your eyes and saying, you can't see me, let's get in the game of managing the risk. And that is start an inventory of your collection. The second thing is in terms of total value, what we'll talk about is, I don't necessarily need you to go get everything in your home appraised, but let's start with the highest value items and make sure we've got that, move that off onto a specific policy, valuable articles policy or personal articles floater. And that helps bring into line the rest of it. But in the end, the last thing is let's get some type of record of everything in the house. And as Carol has indicated, one of the objections we get on that is, well, geez, I'm not spending a whole weekend doing that, and neither are my kids. But this new product that Carol's come out with is something that, by her estimate, we can do an hour and a half, take about an hour and a half in say it's 3,000 to 4,000 square foot home, and capture most of what we need. And so when you put it in that time frame, is it worth an hour and a half to shave off what would be weeks or months on the back end should you have to reconstruct this? I think most people will get it. So it's education and helping people to get their head around something as tragic or as catastrophic as a total loss. If they understand, if I can get my clients and prospects to understand the variance between the price you paid to buy everything versus the price it will cost you to replace it, to deal with the fact that the flat panel TVs may cost less today, but I can't buy the one that's hanging on your wall. We had to buy something different, and making those adjustments, because again, people say, geez, I haven't spent that much money on contents. Well, sure you have, when you start taking every item into account and helping them to understand that. And again, I think that in many cases, I'm sad to say that in my business, in the brokers world, that we rely on what the insurance company has put into a product as a solution, which is far short of what we should be doing. We again, like to view ourselves as managing the risk, not simply transferring the exposure to an insurance company.
Got it, Jim. Interesting points, Jim, and that leads me to get Neelam, the representative of the only insurer in the room. She has a phenomenal set of deep experience when it comes to looking at inventory solutions, digital, and all of that. So, Neelam, while Carol shared her deep experiences of her own customers having transformative experience after using Inventory, and Jim, who's been dealing with personal lines customers for over 30 years, he talks about how inventory can actually be of material difference as far as the claims experience is concerned. Why has the adoption of inventory solution by end user not been the easiest task? I mean, to a logical mind, it clearly outlines lowering premiums, smoothing claims, all of that. What's stopping them?
A good question. And I think Jim sort of hinted on that and touched upon that, and I will enumerate. There are two parties which are involved in helping the adoption. One is the customer, end user customer, and other is the carrier or insurer as a requirer for it. One of the reasons I would actually state what Jim said is making customer realize why it is important, the why aspect of it. And at point of insurance buying process, customer is not thinking claim. They are looking at a big picture protection, but not necessarily that the house would be totaled, given the fact, as we know, in home claim, the frequency is so low, and total home is even smaller. So they don't get to experience that kind of catastrophic losses. To have this in the front and center in the mind for every home insurance transaction when someone is buying it at point of buying. The second part is, even if there was one customer who was savvy enough to know the risk and he wants to do it, the simplicity and the experience of what tools are available are not there yet. The transaction, the new business transaction, we all are working towards making that new business quoting and bind process and underwriting process as simple and as faster as we can, so that customer doesn't have to spend too much time. This is another one more step onto that transaction, and that transaction 1 hour is too much, right? So, or 3 hours of, in many cases, some of the tools expect a lot in from the customer to detail it out, and the solutions are not there yet, which can, in an automated way, do it seamlessly as part of the process. The third part, I would say, for customer is, even if they end up going through this whole hassle, because Allstate actually has a proprietary digital locker, which they actually understood the value and they actually made it available to everyone. Not you don't have to be an Allstate customer to get it, because it is valuable. But even if someone got it, keeping it up to date, because I had this at the point of my buying the policy, but 2 years later, I redid my bedroom or my kitchen, and I don't have that updated picture. So that inventory list is old. How do I keep it up? So there is a process for it, and we need to build that out. That's not there. So from customer perspective, all those pieces are important, and all those things add to why adoption is low. From carrier perspective, I would actually put two important points is why a carrier should be pushing for it. Clearly, one of the things is, as Jim said, there's no great experience for claims. It's just the spectrum of bad experiences, which claims is never the best experience to go through. And content settlement is the worst of the worst. If you have to go through all the list just from your memory, and then there is so much hassle of saying, no, I had this and you are giving me only this much. And so you realize at that point you were underinsured and all those things. So those are things where carrier understand it, but this solution is not at a point where the artificial intelligence can actually give you the value of what was taken through computer vision on those inventory software and others to actually tell you exactly how much you were insured for or what was there in your home, and how do you do that that discussion. At this point, at best, what we have seen, we do have an image, but someone has to manually go through it to actually assess the value of it. So that's one thing. Second part is the prevention. As Jim also mentioned, is if the objective of the carrier is to give that better hassle-free ownership experience for their customer, some of the things are, don't wait till the claims, but have that dialogue on an annual basis with your customer that, hey, looks like your washing machine is at least 5 years old. The model is old. Have you checked its hose last year? Have you replaced the hose? Because that could result in a loss. So all those preventative alert system should, if we can automate or have some way of identifying those risks through these solution, then that becomes a value for the customer and adoption becomes easier. So I think all those things definitely add up. And I think we have solution at the spectrum in all these areas, but not one solution which sort of pulls all these things together.
Right. Thanks for that, Neelam. I think that's quite insightful. Patrick, let me pull you in. Most of us have been using the word claim for a while, and you are the de facto insurance elephant, definitely the big one in this room. Patrick, you've got much deeper and stronger experience in claims in US, as far as I know. And where do you see the role of inventorization in improving customer experience during the claims process?
It's such a large topic, but taking a recent example I was involved in, a customer had a fire in the house. It wasn't a total loss fire, but for the impact on the personal property, the UPP, it affected pretty much the entire house. So all the carriers work to resolve the structure first, which is great. Everything moves along. The customer, it was even working with the carrier on getting the personal property itemized and taken care of. Everything's going well until the carrier says, whoa, you've got this large list, you valued it, and pretty much not saying it, but in their actions, they're saying, we don't trust the value you've placed on these items. So not only did that work for the UPP cease, but they pulled back a settlement offer for that. Now, in a claim, a heavy loss claim, the structure is the body of the claim, but the personal property is the heart of the claim to the insured. It's the last thing that comes into the recovery, but it's the part of the claim that the homeowner or the insured puts emotional value on. All right, so you're in essence, if you're the carrier, you're saying, we don't trust your inventory, even though you've done all of this work on 1,000 items. It's hard to keep a good customer experience in place if you're telling a customer, we're doing all the nuts and bolts of it, but it's very technical, and we're going to disregard the effort you've put into this. I mean, that's kind of hard, but the customer experience drives from preparation, right? The industry is used to preparation for structure, but right from underwriting, the industry does not have preparation in place as well for UPP. If, as Jim has said, it's a percentage-based cover, you've got this lump number. But think in your own house. There are items in the house that if you had an event, you don't care to replace. Things in your basement, in the attic, stuff that you've outgrown, your kids have left, whatever. There needs to be an education and attention right from underwriting to decide, how are we going to put importance on the UPP or personal property section of your property? So if there is an inventory concept in place that the carrier and the insured are considering right from underwriting, all right, what are the important things? What are the high value items? Working your way down to medium value. And then maybe disregarding the unnecessary or the small and putting some kind of number on it. Then it stresses the importance of an inventory to the insured, and a realization that we have certain things in our house that if we had a total loss would be important for us to recover. And they may not be the stereo or whatever. They might be the Hummel figure. They might be the important photo that grandma and grandpa brought back from Italy. All right. The customer needs to be part of the underwriting process. And even though it goes against how the carriers underwrite now with the quick, we want to look at price, we want to look at the value of your house, and we measure the square footage. The dollars paid in contents are the same dollars paid for structure, right? Give it the same attention, give it the same importance. So not only do the customers need to think inventory, the carriers need to think inventory, prioritize the value of personal property, high value, lower value, whatever. Keeping up with the values and what you've got. If we could just get to the importance of inventory of all players right from underwriting, we'd work our way through the rest as more and more data are available. So I say the inventory is critically important. And if you have a framework like Pinventory, that helps all of the players focus what's important, what's evaluation, and it sets, think of this, you renew your policy, customers are becoming accustomed to virtual claim handling for auto and motor claims. Take pictures, take this. All right, take 10 minutes and walk around your house right now for your renewal. Take a video of your important stuff. We'll attach it to your policy, and that's going to help us in case something happens. And it's not only for total loss claims. It can be for any type of claim.
Sure.
All right, so that's why I think inventories are important for customer experience.
Right. Jim, any thoughts on this? Because what Patrick, Neelam, and you and Carol, of course, have said, it all sounds very good, very logical. But my question again is, why is the adoption not as much? Though it is increasing, as Carol's experience tells us. How do you see the comments made by Patrick dovetail with your customers in personal lines?
I agree, and I had not necessarily connected that dot. I think it would be helpful if, as part of the underwriting and onboarding of a client, that we are using an inventory or some type of record to establish what the protection is going to be on personal property. Because right now it's a pre-fill, and that's the amount of attention it gets, and it gets even less on the back end. Interesting, Patrick. I'll share with you a claim. I took this account over the day after the fire. It was about 1,000 square foot guest house on the property that burned to the ground, and the son of the insured was required to adjust the loss because of some health issues for his mom, and so he had to reconstruct all the contents in a 1,000 square foot guest house that nobody had recorded. His mother was an antique collector, or owned an antique store, so everything had value beyond simply replacement because it was mostly antiques, and it was really contentious. I mean, it was a very difficult settlement. We spent about $1 million on the house, on the dwelling piece of it, and we finally settled on just over $3 million on the contents in 1,000 square feet, and it was legit. And to Patrick's point, he knew nothing about it and did all this research. He never submitted a list that wasn't on a spreadsheet with a documented website where he had seen the piece and its value. And virtually every one of them was questioned by the insurer, as well as the expert that they brought in that was trying to convince him that these items his mother had collected were not of the same value.
And who did the heavy lifting? The heavy lifting was the insured. Without a doubt. And I mean, I mean, there was all kinds of discussion about additional people looking at the claim. And, fortunately, we had a really good relationship with the carrier. And I said, well, you may win this one, but the war will be, we will not do business with you anymore. And that's ultimately where he moved. I was in the room for the final settlement, but I mean, literally saw that with my own eyes, what Pat just described there, because that's exactly the path it went down. And so I think to get to your question, that if that's done on the front end, where, look, there's a real value to this, and maybe so far as to say, it allows us to throw a credit on here if you help us document what we're going to face on the back end, that would be more of an incentive than simply we're taking care of it. And look, most of the people we work with play the game of, again, cover my eyes and you can't see me, because they don't know what they don't know, and they want to have a plausible reason why it's not their fault on the back end, and we can solve that by helping them get there, and with the support of the carrier saying this is a process that doesn't have to be done 2 days, within 48 hours of binding the policy. It could be done over the course of the year and through renewal reviews. So I think that's a great idea. I think the support from the insurer side would help us and improve the broker experience as well, if we could do that, because they just don't get it. They don't understand it. It's not their fault. It's a matter of getting them to understand what it's going to be like and the value of it on the back end, time and money. It's not simply the settlement amount. It's as Pat has indicated, it's massive undertaking to try to document the cost to replace all these items.
Absolutely. So Jim, just building on your comment, as someone who has got deep experience in personal lines, with a vast network of relationship with direct clients, what are the kind of strategies you at USI are using to encourage your customers to create home inventories?
Well, we do it across the board. Again, we try to take loss control. Carol has joined us for one of our monthly webinar series we did, and it was originally built around security, but I think this is also a security issue where we had an appraisal company and Carol come on and talk about the importance of setting the values and building out inventories and lists of contents and setting values with professional advice where that's recorded and stored somewhere off premises. And so we regularly hold events like this. Invite our clients and our prospects. We also publish a monthly article that is distributed through to all of our clients and prospects. And again, just a continuous effort to educate the client. We also do that internally. And so we have a proprietary tool that we use. We call it the Omni. It includes hundreds of solutions. We don't write a solution that does not include methods to reduce or mitigate the loss. And so in the case of setting the value on both the property as well as the personal contents would include things like an inventory or things like an appraisal or having an estimate on the value of the reconstruction of the house. If they're uncomfortable with that, get the contractor that always comes in and fixes the house. And I'm not going to hold them to it, but I at least have a professional opinion. I can't go back and say, I don't like that number because, well, I don't like that number. You can go back and say, I don't like that number because I've got this professional who's in the business and will tell me that. It'll be off topic a little bit in terms of the inventory, but I would suggest today that we probably have better than 70% of the homes in America underinsured at this point because of supply chains and labor issues. And everybody's just kind of covering their eyes and saying it's not real. And it is. If you have a total loss today, you're facing a real problem, which means your contents are going to be a problem as well. And so I think we have to do a better job of getting in the protection business and not getting into the policy business. And that's the piece from the broker side. I think the carriers can assist us in placing value on work done by clients to make it a better risk and have them understand it better. And I really am intrigued by Pat's remarks. I think that is really a critical piece that would help us a lot.
Absolutely. Agreed with you there.
Actually, I would add to Jim's comment here on underwriting. I would actually state that this solution is not just for personal content part of it. One of the things, as Jim was saying, is from underwriting perspective, I do want to know at point of when the coverage and insurance amount is being determined, is you have a high-end kitchen or a standard kitchen. That itself, the cabinets can make such a big difference. And if you have a picture and we are able to identify that this is a high-end cabinet structure, that, and you know how many times the kitchen part can be in your claims and you have to reconstruct. It's not only the labor, exactly right now, labor and material cost have gone up, but then if you have a very customized cabinetry and cabinet structure, you better have a document and way to support it. And if it was not at the point of purchase of your insurance, maybe 3 years later, you updated or upgraded your kitchen, you better have that updated as well. And that is one of the things which I'd say it's not just at point of purchase, you should have this kind of a video or picture attached, but I put this onus on many of the agent businesses, or when you are having a renewal transaction, this may be a good time for that annual review process of your assets and your insurance, if you have got the right coverage and right level of insurance for all these pieces as well. So yes, content is important, but it is equally important. We are talking about this big remodeling and other structural things as well.
Absolutely.
Let me interject with response to the items. On average, could any of you guess, on average, if you count every spoon, fork, knife, plate, how many items are in an average American home? Can any of you take a guess?
Well, I can take a guess. It may not be right. 3,500. 3,500.
Add 2 more zeros.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Oh,
300,000 items are in an average home. The reason I recommend not using video is because items are constantly changing. The one time your home inventory is going to be closest to reality is when you get married. because you have a registry and you've just moved together sometimes. After that, every year it gets more items get sold, more items get acquired. And if you have a video, it's much more difficult to try to keep that up. So if you have something like Pinventory, all you have to do is just take a photo of the wall where the brand new Viking gas stove is, and you've captured it, because with the resolution on cell phones these days, you can zoom right in and you can see everything about it. And the minute you hit save, your photo is automatically saved to our secure platform, where you can then add any kind of additional information. You can add, and again, you don't have to add the receipts right then and there. If something happens, at least you have the photo that shows what happened. So that's my comment. Also, Pinventory has these reports. We worked with United policyholders and created an insurance claims report. So once you have an inventory, then if you lose something, all you have to do is push a button and you'll get the report the way that the insurance companies would like it. So that, and we could even create an API to a firm like Allstate, where it's much less overwhelming for the end user and the consumer to deal with this information.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay.
Very helpful. We have got 3 questions coming in, including a hand from a participant. In order that they came in, the first question is from Kristen. And the question, perhaps, Jim, you might like to take this on. What constitutes expensive items, and do they affect claims?
So I would start on that question. I would start with the items that are limited under the special limits coverage under the homeowner. So we have limitations on jewelry, we have limitations on furs, we have limitations on fine arts and collectibles. Those classes of business where the contents limit is not the full limit of the policy. It's going to be specific to that class, and that's the first one. And by expensive, I would track it this way. The common homeowners is probably providing, let's use jewelry. It's the one that's most common. Everybody has jewelry they want to have scheduled for the most part, and maybe $2,500 for theft or disappearance of a piece of jewelry is going to be limited on the homeowners. So if you have more than that, let's start with what the universe is, and then to Pat's earlier point, the $100 pair of earrings, the first pair of earrings you bought may be of less interest to you 10 years later when you now have diamond studs, right? And so setting a limit based on what you'd want to replace and the ones that fall immediately above the limit in the policy. And that is oftentimes the first experience that clients have with scheduling articles. And so they think that when you bring that up, you're going to put them in the poorhouse because it's the most expensive rate to schedule. Everything else is going to fall below that because we wear our jewelry. Men are particularly terrible with it. We leave watches on sinks, and we leave rings and other things and bracelets in lockers and in gyms, and women take care of their jewelry a whole lot better. But mysterious disappearance is a big piece of that, and because it's mobile and you wear it all the time, it's going to have a higher rate than, say, a Picasso, which is going to be mounted on your wall and probably not going to leave that room unless you have multiple properties. You may move it there, and in which case you're going to hire a professional contractor to move that. And so if we could take those pieces, that's where I'd start. And then secondly, items that fall above the deductible, considerably above the deductible. So do I want to come in to somebody with a $10,000 deductible on their homeowners and say, geez, here are 40 pieces of jewelry with a value less than $10,000. Let's get that on the schedule. I'd be less worried about that because they've already indicated the willingness to carry that cost on their own. And I think the answer is working with them. There may be a $200 bracelet that your grandmother gave you that, although I can't replace it, is sentimental enough that you'd want to buy something. And that one we certainly would take a look and say, maybe we should schedule that. And that's the conversation that you'd have. In the end, I think the client has to make the decision. We identify the risk, we identify the alternatives to solve it, and go from there. But if I extract that, if we just sit for a minute and think about taking out artwork, taking out china, taking out crystal, taking out jewelry, electronic equipment can be scheduled. There's lots of things you can do with a marine form, which gives me a lot of flexibility. That if I take all that out, the contents limit now falls closer to in the range you would need to actually replace your belongings on a very large or complete loss. And without that, I think you're going to run out of contents coverage faster than most people see. And you know, I've shared this several times, Anuraag, with our clients and saying, this is the misfortune or good fortune that I have, and that is I've stood in a home that's been severely damaged, and I've yet to meet someone in that case which says, geez, I wish I bought less coverage. Geez, I really wish that was lower, because when it comes down to it and the rubber hits the road, more often than not, they wish they had more. And so what we try to do is, and I forget who said it, but prepare them. Like what I need to do is get you ready for the worst case scenario, prepare for the worst and hope for the best, is the approach. And I think that's a sound. So I hope that answers the question, but I think that's how I would break it out. Neelam, I don't know whether you have a different perspective on that, but that's how I would think about it.
No, definitely that is one perspective, but I will actually add another angle. Expensive is different for different people if how you are determining. So I'll actually give you one example, which a new trend which we are seeing in this area, as we have a larger and larger portion of millennials who have now become our customers, and we are seeing for them that expensive camera is most important, even though they are renters and they are not homeowners, but they do want, they value it. And same kind of itemization is important for renters as well, as we are talking about content, right? So for them, now new coverages, single item coverages are popping up just to focus on those couple of key items which they want to insure and have coverage for. So I would say expensive arts is one, and jewelry and other things are important, but more and more your electronics. And if you are a traveler, for you, that blogger or vloggers have much more value on those cameras and those iPads and laptops, which they carry along with them, and that are becoming bigger part of this conversation as well.
True. Patrick, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, we have to consider also lifestyle, personal property,
Yes.
bicycles, hiking equipment, and there may be need for coverage that goes outside of the normal named perils that most homeowners policies have. If you have a bicycle and you're out doing off-road and you have a problem, you may need a specialty coverage, as Neelam says, on that $10,000 bicycle that may be otherwise not covered. So expensive is relative. If it's not covered, that's really expensive. All right, no matter what. Okay,
Sure.
but the unique, the gig, essentially they're on demand. Maybe you insure the bike for 4 hours on a Sunday when you're going out. So expensive is relative, but there's a lot of options that are coming out that makes the traditional named peril coverage become less of a focus.
Right.
I wonder how many apartments across America now have Pelotons in them, which may be the most expensive item sitting in the apartment. Think about it that way as well.
And you spill your cup of coffee into it,
Yep.
and that's not a named peril. Yeah,
that's correct. Yep.
Yes. We have a question coming in from a visitor on our YouTube channel. I'll read the question out for everyone. What should the customer experience look like when the policyholder puts in a $300,000 contents claim for a fire loss of the insured's 18 multiplied by 26 detached garage?
Well, it really, from my standpoint, unless there's a policy wording that excludes the property from being covered like anything else, essentially most personal property policies within the United States, Canada, and primarily Europe will say your personal property is covered no matter where it is across the globe, as long as it's something you own or use. So if there's a $300,000 claim on an 18 by 26 garage, number one, one might think you can't fit 300,000 items in a structure that size, but you may have 10 items that are worth $20,000 that a home handyman uses for woodworking. So there is no one claim that's the same as the next.
Yeah.
There just isn't.
Right.
So one would hope that someone who has that much personal property in that, in that type of a space has done some type of upfront work. And that would be my first question is, you've presented this claim of $300,000. I'm sorry that happened. Please send your documentation of what supports that claim. Hopefully it's in an inventory form or some type of organized fashion, but it's difficult to prejudge claims.
Yep.
All right. You have to take every claim on its face as being legitimate, but the insured has conditions they must follow of what they must do after a loss. Just ask them to follow the conditions. That will help the carrier, help the insured. So I'd handle it like any other claim.
Yeah, and I think the question comes in because Pat hit on it that at $300,000 in a space that small, is that possible? And so it comes back to tell me what was there. I remember early in my career, I sat at a property desk and adjusted a loss of a theft of I think it was a Vega. That's how long ago it was. And it was a small car, and this character had everything, including his wife's dry cleaned, boxed up wedding dress in the back of this car. And there was a point at which you're saying, literally, there's not enough space for all the items you have here. So let's figure out what was actually in the vehicle. And we came to an agreement, but it's a similar question. And when the inventory came in, it didn't match because the number of things that was there literally he wouldn't have been able to sit in the car and drive it, right? So there's no way he was storing everything in his vehicle. And I think that's the initial question here. But I would agree with Pat. If the inventory comes in and it works, that the values fit based on what's there, then that's covered. It should be covered unless there's some type of special exclusion on that policy, which would be rare.
Sure. We've got about 7 minutes left, and there is another question coming in from Winston. I'll read the question out. Are certain carriers more accepting of a inventory type service versus other carriers like Chubb or Pure versus Allstate or Nationwide? Another way to think about it, should inventory help drive carrier selection for first-time home buyers versus carriers which do not accept an independent inventory service?
Neelam, you want to go first on that?
Yeah, so I don't think it is a matter of third party or first party solution. It is a solution. Clearly, Allstate thought was important. That's why we started in the journey a couple of years back with digital locker. And obviously we are focusing and figuring out how to make it easy for the customer to adopt and work through it. So I think every carrier, there is always a healthy balance on how do we engage our customer in protecting their own assets and preventing potential experience issues in future, but also how do we make sure they are being covered for the right amount and it doesn't come as a surprise later when they actually have to go through a claims experience. And insurance is tough, and we know a customer is not thinking claims process at point of sale, and that's again that becomes an issue. So it becomes very important for carriers when they are putting an additional step at the point of sale to make sure it gels with all the other steps which are required to fulfill that transaction. And that's I think, place all carriers are today. It's not that they don't want it. They are trying to find whether the solution is ready and can it be engaged at point of sale, or should there be another way of having that constant connection with our customers as a service. Hippo is doing something similar on the other side, how to make the whole ownership part of home different through other services. Every carrier is looking, Nationwide has got something similar. We look at it from different services from Allstate also. So carrier is not only looking at insurance and this need of this ease of experience from claims perspective only, but also a good overall experience, which can be used for different services, and sort of telling you your water heater is probably at end of life. Make sure you have water detection devices around it, or you need to service it. All those things are also equally important, and such solutions actually put you in a place where you can provide those additional value add services to your customers. And that's what I would say. Every carrier is looking at building that personalized, customized experience with their client. So this is an important foundation for it.
Just a quick one. Our YouTube visitor has provided some feedback, Patrick, and that is that the claim includes 9 bottles of bourbon valued at $66,500. So I just thought I should let you know.
And actually, the presenter of the question dropped me a note. I know the gentleman well, and he just very well may have those 10 bottles.
All right, excellent. We've got about 3 minutes left, and I'll probably put this as the last question coming in from Christine, and I'll quickly paraphrase this. Should insurers be offering a discount for people using home inventory? Neelam, you're the
from a broker standpoint, I'd say that's easy. Yes, I think that they should. I think there's value to that.
Sure.
It would provide a savings on the back end. It would provide far greater underwriting ability. And the other question in the chat about the difference with the carriers, most of them don't require this. So if you brought that to the table, I think that would put you in a different category than those who don't. So I think they would welcome it, and inventory would be acceptable. So again, Neil, I didn't need to tread on your comment. So.
No, I think this is a good comment on discounted premium. So here is where I will put a little bit regulator's hat here. In America, insurance is a highly regulated industry, and pricing is one part of that, which we have to get approved by our Department of Insurance. As we talked about it, frequency of claims on home is such an infrequent event that to provide a loss support of mitigation and how does it help in long term will take a lot of time to actually give a data-based approach to support this. This is where a lot of those IoTs are sort of struggling to figure out how to make this intuitively. It makes sense that this will help, but putting it in the form of loss mitigation and having a loss support puts it in a longer trajectory. Everyone is looking at it from different perspective, and we are all actively checking what exactly is support, because they are rebating laws. So we cannot ask and say that if you use this service, we will give you this discount, because that's not how it works in at least not in United States with our regulators here.
Yeah, I'd like to add that a discount on using an inventory service may make sense on its face, but is there not more value to an upfront conversation at binding of the policy where the insured and the carrier are involved in setting that limit? And at that point, the carrier can say, oh, on what inventory is that based? And here are some potential service uses, because a discount eventually is an artificial push upwards on all the policy premiums for every other customer that doesn't use the inventory. All right, but there is an educational value up front that involves bringing inventory into the picture to help customers understanding where their personal property limits should be. All right, and considering a point we haven't really gotten to, and I know we're short on time, outside of the US, Europe, there's not the large volumes of personal properties that are held. But as middle classes begin to grow, say in particularly Asia, where there'll be 3 billion middle class folks in 5 to 8 years, there are important new items that people see as valuable. So there has to be, number one, a build of insurance penetration. And two, how do you build that? Is it the item valuation? And can an inventory service be changed a little bit to help establish values and establish a place where those values are kept for, say, for example, tying in with parametric losses for high value stuff. So
Yes.
there's a lot to think of here. But is the use as a discount practical? Not from a regulatory standpoint, but it should prompt us to be more educational.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, this just brings us to the closure. Patrick, Neelam, Jim, Carol, thank you so much for joining in today. We had good participation from the audience, both on Zoom and on YouTube, including our friendly Bourbon guy. So it was a good conversation. I enjoyed it very much. In case the audience may want to share their inputs further, you already have my email contact. I'll be very happy to respond further. Thank you, everyone, once again. Have a good day.
Thanks, Anuraag. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.